It started as just another flight, passengers settling in, flight attendants making announcements. But things took a turn when an older man in first class noticed the young soldier taking his seat in economy. His face twisted in disapproval. With a loud scoff, he muttered something under his breath, just loud enough for those around to hear. The soldier, calm and composed, ignored him. But the man didn't stop. He made snide remarks about who deserved to sit where, questioning why people like him were even in the military. Other passengers exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke up. The tension was thick, the atmosphere heavy. The soldier, still silent, kept his eyes forward, his training teaching him discipline even in moments like this. Hours later, the flight landed. They parted ways. But the next morning, that same man saw something on the news that made his stomach drop. The man sipped his morning coffee, scrolling through the news like he did every day. But then, a headline caught his eye. His heart skipped a beat. The photo on the screen looked familiar. He clicked the article, and as the story unfolded, a chill ran down his spine. The soldier from the plane, he was in the news. And not just for anything. The article detailed an act of heroism, something that made the man's rude words from the flight feel even heavier. He blinked, reading further. This soldier had saved lives, risked his own for others. The very people he had insulted had shown more courage than he ever had. His mind flashed back to the flight, to the way the young man sat quietly, taking his insults without a word. Now the weight of his own actions hit him hard. He had judged without knowing, and now he couldn't take it back. The man set his coffee down, his hands slightly trembling. He couldn't stop staring at the screen. The article went into detail about a rescue mission overseas, one that had nearly cost the soldier his life. While others had retreated, he had run toward danger, pulling injured comrades to safety. The same soldier the man had mocked just hours earlier had been out there risking everything for people he didn't even know. A knot formed in his stomach as he thought back to his own words. The sneer in his voice, the way he had dismissed the young man as if he were beneath him. And yet, that soldier had carried himself with dignity, refusing to engage in an argument. Now, the man wondered, had the soldier already known about the mission before the flight? Had he been sitting there, carrying the weight of what was to come, while enduring an insult he didn't deserve? He exhaled sharply, guilt creeping in. What had driven him to act that way? Was it pride? Ignorance? He didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing. He had made a terrible mistake, and now he couldn't shake the feeling that it was too late to fix it. The man couldn't focus for the rest of the day. The article played over and over in his mind, every sentence hitting like a weight on his chest. He thought about the soldier's face on the plane, calm, unshaken, as if he had heard words like that before. Maybe he had. Maybe far too many times. The realization made the man's stomach churn. He had been just another voice in a long line of people who judged without knowing, spoke without understanding. Hours passed, but the guilt didn't fade. Instead, it grew. He found himself searching online, trying to learn more about the soldier. There were more stories, interviews, articles, people praising his bravery. The more he read, the worse he felt. How had he been so blind? That night, he barely slept. He kept thinking about what he would do if he saw the soldier again. Would he apologize? Would the young man even care? Or was he just another face the soldier had learned to ignore? The next morning, the man made a decision, one he wasn't sure would change anything, but he knew he had to try. The man decided he couldn't just sit with the guilt. He had to do something. But how? He didn't know the soldier's name, only what he had read in the articles. He kept searching, scrolling through news reports, hoping for a way to reach him. And then he found it, an upcoming public event honoring military heroes. His heart pounded. What were the chances? Was this his chance to make things right? The day of the event arrived, and the man found himself standing among a large crowd. He scanned the stage, searching for that familiar face. Then he saw him. The soldier stood tall, shaking hands, smiling graciously at the people around him. The man's chest tightened. Would he even remember? Would he care? Just as he gathered the courage to step forward, a reporter's voice cut through the noise. "Can you tell us about what happened before your deployment? We heard there was an incident on a flight." The man's breath caught. His worst fear had just come true. The soldier turned toward the reporter, his expression unreadable. And in that moment, the man realized he was about to find out exactly what the soldier thought of him. The man froze as the reporter's question hung in the air. His palms grew sweaty. This was it, the moment he had dreaded. Would the soldier expose him? Call him out in front of everyone? He braced himself, expecting the worst. The soldier looked at the reporter, then at the crowd, his expression calm. "Yeah, I remember that flight," he said slowly. The man's stomach dropped. "There was someone on board who judged me before knowing anything about me." The crowd murmured, and the man swallowed hard. But then the soldier continued, "It reminded me why I serve. Not for recognition, not for thanks, but because sometimes people need to see past their own perspective." He smiled faintly. "I don't hold grudges. I just hope that person learned something that day." The man's breath hitched. He wasn't called out. He was given grace. And somehow, that felt heavier than any punishment. The man stood there stunned. The soldier had every reason to call him out, to shame him in front of the world, but instead, he chose kindness. He had given the man a chance to change, to reflect, and in that moment, the man realized something. True strength wasn't in words or status, it was in character. As the crowd applauded, the man felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to say something, to apologize, but he knew now that words wouldn't be enough. Change wasn't about what you said, it was about what you did moving forward. With a deep breath, he turned and walked away, not out of shame, but with a new understanding. He couldn't erase the past, but he could learn from it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward becoming a better person.